Welcome back. Health experts are warning expectant parents of a disease that's a leading infectious cause of birth defects. It's known as the cytomegalovirus, or CMV.
And if it's an unfamiliar term to you, you're not alone. 6 News' Johan Morin is on your side with one family's story and what expectant mothers can do to avoid the risk.
Right now, Kim Widener spends time with her 7-year-old daughter, Bailey, playing piano like any mother would. But just 3 years ago, she received news that would make any parent's heart drop.
Our youngest daughter, Bailey, at age 4, was diagnosed with a hearing loss. She has single-sided deafness in her right ear.
Widener tells us she remembers it all like it was just yesterday. After receiving news, she and her husband scrambled to different doctors in the metro to find out why their daughter was losing her hearing. Several appointments later, Widener found out that during her pregnancy with Bailey, she caught the cytomegalovirus.
It was my first primary infection with CMV. So that means a primary infection, you're more apt to pass along to the baby.
It's often mistaken for the common cold, and Widener says doctors didn't diagnose her as being infected at the time.
I might have done things slightly different during my pregnancy. I could have protected her more.
Dr. Anderson Berry with Nebraska Medicine says 1 out of 200 pregnancies are impacted by CMV.
But not everyone who has a CMV infection during pregnancy is going to have consequences to the fetus or the newborn.
Berry says CMV is contracted through saliva or urine, mostly from babies and young children. And pregnant mothers need to be extra cautious.
Having them wear gloves when they're changing diapers while they're pregnant, not sharing food utensils, cups, not licking off pacifiers, washing hands frequently while caring for their toddlers or other people's toddlers.
Widener wants to inform other expectant mothers who might not be aware of the virus by petitioning lawmakers for a bill to require screening for the virus.
We just want to be a tool too for other people out there.
Bailey and her family will continue to spread awareness of the CMV virus, but most importantly inspire others who are in difficult situations to keep moving forward and remain positive. On your side in Omaha, Johan Morin, 6 News.